Hey lovely humans. Today I'm going to walk you through running all updates on a test WordPress site. So what that means is I'm going to walk you through updating WordPress itself, updating any plugins that are installed, and updating any theme updates that are available. I'm doing this on a test site that I have on my server, so we're not impacting a client site or my own site. But the same rules will apply to your business website. I'm already logged into the dashboard, which is what you see here. So let's dig in. First, before we run any sort of update, we want to run a backup. The reason that we want to do this is in case something goes wrong, we have somewhere to go instead of, oh shit, now what, right? So this site has Backup Buddy installed. So I'm going to move over to Backup Buddy, and I always start with just a simple database backup. It gets things moving. It's a really quick backup. Now, if you're not using Backup Buddy, a free option is BackWP Up. Otherwise, certain hosting companies will run backups for you. Tiny Blue Orange is an example of that. We run backups for our clients every single night. But if you don't have that option, you always want to run a backup before you do those updates. Whether that's with a free plugin or Backup Buddy or something similar, that's a premium plugin that you pay for. So once I run that database, then I'm going to run a complete backup. What a complete backup looks like is that it's backing up every single thing. It's backing up all pages, all posts, all themes, all plugins, and all of the settings that go with them. So a database backup is great to have, but a full backup is better because then you're not having to re-enter in those settings or any configurations that your site might have. So this just happens behind the scenes. This is a pretty small website, so this process goes quickly. Sometimes it takes a couple minutes, so you can be working on something else or scrolling through social media, but you'll see that this is done. So I'm going to download the backup so that I have it. And I'll go back to backups just to show you that the status is good. So I'm going to minimize this so it fits in the window. So you'll see that the backup downloaded, so that way I have the backup on my computer in case something goes terribly wrong when I run these updates. But I want you to know that most times you're going to be okay, so don't be afraid to run those updates. The other way to kind of avoid that fear of running any sort of update on your site is to have a staging site. And that's a nerdy way of saying that you have a copy of your website that you're not directing traffic to, and that site allows you to play. So that site gives you the ability to run updates, make sure they look great, and then you can do the same thing on your live site or the site that you have traffic going to. Some hosting companies will offer this up for you. Again, Tiny Blue Orange offers this to all of our customers. But if you don't have that option and you're hosting with a company that gives you unlimited or multiple website installs, an easy way to do this is to make a clone of your website using the very same backup tool that you used. So you run a backup, you set it up as its own website, and then from there you can test the backups, the updates, you can test changes or new themes or anything like that. So a staging site is a great tool, not a requirement, but if you're a little bit nervous about running updates or making changes to the live site, the staging site is that sandbox that you can play in. So now that I have my backup downloaded, I'm going to head over to the updates total. You can do so with the top admin bar or by going to dashboard and updates. So first things first is we have to know what the heck these updates even are. So I like to start with plugins, and you can click to view the details of each plugin update that's available. I know this is really dry reading. It's not super exciting stuff, but it's important to understand what you're doing. And if you don't fully understand the notes, that's okay. But understanding why this update is available. Is it a security issue? Is it a feature that you might have been looking for? Or is it that it was conflicting with another piece of your website? And hey, knowing that this update will solve that problem you were having will keep you from having to hire somebody to fix the problem. So this one is related to server tools, remote destinations, and deployment. I understand all of that. I don't have any issues with these areas, so I'm good to run the update. I'm going to close that and do the same thing for broken link checker. So now we have a PHP compatibility issue. PHP version has to do with what your server is running, so this is pretty important. And then brute force protection. Unfortunately, they're just telling me it's a bug fix. They're not giving me much more information. I wish they gave a little bit more, but knowing that it's a bug fix means that it could solve a problem that I was having with the site. So now that I know what those updates are, the other thing I'm going to look at is the compatibility with WordPress version. So this first listing is the current version that this site is on. The second listing is what the latest version of WordPress is. If you are running the latest version of WordPress, you'll only see one listing. Now, don't be scared to run updates even if it lists unknown. I will tell you that 4.9.1 is a very new version of WordPress, so most plugins haven't been tested with that. It doesn't mean that they won't run. Likely they worked with 4.9, which was the version that was just before this one, and that .1 really wasn't a drastic change. It was just some minor things. So it's just good to know if you see 100%, you're in business. If you see unknown, it doesn't mean you shouldn't update. If you see a lower percentage, check the notes that come with it. It might be user error. It might be a plugin conflict. But just kind of having that information. The other thing that I want to talk about before we run updates, this site only has 3 pending plugin updates. If you have more than 6, I try to run them in batches of 6 or less. What that does is it keeps the site out of maintenance mode for long periods of time and gives you the ability to test the updates and narrow down any problems to very specific plugins. The great thing is that having only 3, it's really easy to check where the issues might lie, and the updates will run pretty quick. So we talked a lot about plugins, but I'm going to tell you, I typically start my updates by running the theme updates first. 2017 is just a backup theme that I have installed in case I need to. Divi is the main theme on this site, but we were running 3.0.4. Now we're on 3.0.9, so I know this isn't a super big change. Same with 2017. We're still version 1. It's just some updates that we missed. So I'm going to hit select all, and I'm going to hit update themes. Now what's going to happen is WordPress is going to take over. It's going to run the updates in the background. While this is happening, it's putting my site in maintenance mode, which means that no one can access the site content. Now, it's a pretty quick process, but that's something you'll want to keep in mind if you have something directing people to your site. So there wasn't any editing there. That's literally how quick it was. So I'm going to return to the WordPress updates page. And while that loads, I'm going to come over to the home page and I'm going to refresh it. And I'm going to make sure that everything looks good. Now, because this is a test site, there's really not much on it. There's really not much that can go wrong, but I just want to make sure that it works. If this was your live site, you would click around on pages, make sure that everything looked good and the theme was working as you needed it to. If all of that works well, then we're going to hop back over to the updates and we're going to run the next batch. And so after running theme updates, I run the plugin updates. Again, I like running them in sets smaller than 6. Something like 3 to 4 is awesome. So this is the perfect number. I'm going to select all. I know that I'm running an update for Backup Buddy, for Broken Link Checker, and for Brute Force Login Protection. The nice thing is that these are all behind the scenes plugins. So as we run the updates, once those are done, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to test that the site works. But because these are all behind the scenes plugins, as long as I'm still logged into the dashboard and as long as the site is loading on the front end, we should be good to go. So I'm going to head back over here. I'm going to refresh it again. Great. It still looks the same. I can scroll through. And if you notice how slow the site is loading, guess what? I'm going to record a video for how to speed up your website very soon. So stay tuned for that. Another option and something I'd recommend is testing all of the plugins that you updated. So what that would look like for this is I would run a Backup Buddy backup to make sure that that plugin continues to work. I would run the Broken Link Checker to make sure that it still looks for broken links on the site, but there aren't any, so I'm not too worried about that. And then Brute Force Login Protection is something that's happening behind the scenes, so I can't really test that. If you were running an update for, let's say, a form plugin that's on your contact page, I would head over to the contact page on your site and I would test the form. So I would enter in your name, your email address, a message, and make sure that it works the way that you want it to. So once you're done testing all of the plugin updates and running all of the updates that you have, we only have one left, and that's the core WordPress update. So once this loads, I'm glad this happened. So sometimes this happens while you're running updates is something gets released and you need to run another update. Or what will commonly happen is you run an update to WordPress and a plugin was pending once you got to that new version. So this happens. So what we're going to do is we're going to run this plugin update before we get to WordPress. So since this is new, I'm going to click View version 5.6.7 details and see why this plugin is being updated. So not a whole lot of information, but fixed an assortment of bugs found in the previous version. Okay, great. If I was running a really old version, I would have some data to read through. So knowing that they added a new field type, knowing that they fixed some issues, the language things, I don't really care about those because my site is running in English and that language isn't listed, but kind of getting an idea of what's happening. It just really helps you understand what the update is for. So again, I'm going to select all, even though there's only one. The other option is you could just check that checkbox, and then I'm going to hit Update Plugins. Once this update is done, we're going to head back over to the live site and refresh, again testing to make sure that everything is looking good. So one more time before we get to the main update. Everything is loading slowly, but it's loading, so we're good there. And again, if you had multiple pages, this is a single page site. Click around on the pages, do some investigating, making sure everything looks good. So now we can head back to the updates page to get that final update taken care of. Wow, okay. So the plugin that I just updated needs an update to the database using this big blue button. So I'm going to take care of that first. It's going to ask, hey, did you run a backup? I know that I have a backup that's only a few minutes old, so I'm okay with that. It's great. See what's new. Okay, again, you could read all of this if you'd like. That's fine. We're not going to go through it one by one because this is plugin specific. I'm going to head back to that updates page. The other thing, I want to clear out some of these alerts. So when I updated Backup Buddy, it gives me this alert letting me know what's new. That's awesome. I've already read it, but if you wanted to read it, you could check those things out. I'm going to dismiss that. And important, before updating, back up your files. Great, we've already done that. So that'll clear out once we're done. So now it's time to run an update of WordPress. All you have to do is click the Update Now button. Again, your site's going to go into maintenance mode. It's usually pretty quick, but keep that in mind. So you don't want to be running your updates the same time that you post a link on social media and route traffic to your site. But before I could even finish that sentence, the update was done. So that's awesome. This page will give you some information about what's new, what's happening. You can scroll through and read about it. But first, we're going to head over to our site. I'm going to reload it. Make sure that the site loads. One more time, I know I sound like a broken record, but if you had other content, please click on those pages. Make sure that everything looks good. To me, everything looks just as I expect it to. So now that I have a completely up-to-date site, I'm going to load the updates page just to make sure there aren't any lingering plugins. So we're great. Then I'm going to run another backup. So what this does is gives me a copy of the site completely up to date. And you'll notice this looks a little bit different than when we got started. That's because it's a new version with some new features. So I'm going to start with that database only. Let that run. And this way I can have a copy of the site completely up to date and working versus the backup I made at the start of this process where it was a functioning site, but it had updates to run. So this just gives you the ability to go back in time to your updated site if you need to. So should you be hacked, should something go wrong on your server, that sort of thing. So again, I'm going to run that complete backup next. These are really quick because it's a small site, but don't be alarmed if this takes you a little bit of time. And once the update is done, that's it. Your site is up to date, you're good to go. So just to quickly recap, when it's time to run some updates, so when you have that little number up here telling you that you have some items out of date, run a backup, then head to the updates page to learn a little bit more about what those updates are. Once you feel like you kind of have a grasp on what's going on, run your updates. I like to go theme updates, plugin updates, WordPress update. So I work from the bottom to the top of the page. You head over to your site and you test it and you make sure that everything looks good. Once that is all taken care of and everything looks the way that it should, you run another backup. If you were using a staging site to run your updates, what you could do, depending on your setup, is you could push the changes live from staging. So that's what our hosting customers have as an option, where you click a button and everything goes to that live site. Or knowing that the updates ran as they should, then you hop over to the live site and run your updates. So that's it. That's all there is to running your updates and taking care of your site, making sure that it's up to date so that it's secure, that it's running smoothly, and that you have the latest and greatest features.